What's up, girls? I just read To Have and Have Not by Ernest Hemingway. Um, I read it as part of Y.G. Dimmock's Yale course, Hemingway, Faulkner, Fitzgerald. 250-page book. From a pleasure perspective, I would say it's probably my least favorite Hemingway book that I've read. It takes place in Cuba, and he wrote it during the Great Depression. And it's really about the contrast between, having certain good things in your life and losing them. And he kind of approaches it from the perspective of a lot of different characters, different races, different genders, different classes, and he'll show them, having something like whether it be a wealthy income or a blue-collar job, and then losing it, and how each different archetype of person reacts to losing what they had previously. It was a series of short stories that he had sold to Esquire that he later combined and made into a full-length novel. I think the two main short stories are the first two kind of sections, and they're a lot better than the rest of the book. The prose is a lot tighter. They kind of feel like a cohesive entire story. I felt like the book kind of lost me as it went on. And this is known to be like a controversial book of Hemingway's. I think a lot of people feel like it's, some people really love it and claim he's doing a lot of stylistic experimentation because he's doing a lot of POV switching. The main character, Harry Morgan, he'll have him in first person in some scenes, and then he switches to third person, and then he'll switch to the perspective of another character named Albert, who we'll see Harry through his eyes. But it just doesn't feel that tight, it doesn't really feel like a Hemingway, and I feel like I really like reading minimal prose. I don't write it, but a book that has a great minimal prose is awesome. This is one of the examples of a book where I feel like the minimal prose was really a disservice to the story he was trying to tell, because you really need a ton of context outside of the book to understand what's going on and what he's exploring during the book. You need to know it's written in the Great Depression, and that kind of in the general zeitgeist, a lot of people were dealing with loss of lifestyle, whatever. One of the characters goes through losing some bodily autonomy. There's a divorce. But yeah, Hemingway also apparently wasn't even living in Cuba when he wrote this. It takes place in Cuba and is mostly about, it kind of centers around a certain bar in Cuba, and then also around some fishing and liquor smuggling expeditions, which on the very surface is just kind of an action premise I think would be really cool. But yeah, you can almost kind of tell the lecturer Y.G. Dimmock in the Yale course talks about how it's at that point in time he would not have had enough political insight to be able to really create a good political analogy for what was going on in Cuba at the time anyway. Apparently they had 6 presidents in the course of 10 years during this block of time. Yeah, it was strange because I really enjoy Hemingway books typically, but this one just wasn't it. And it's kind of funny too, I guess, from a creative perspective. I always kind of imagine my favorite writers as having just this perfect, every book they wrote was perfect, and they have a kind of closed systemic canon almost, where they explore different things but everything is good. And I've kind of come to realize, like, as I go deeper on even some of my favorite authors, um, they have like often written some books that are, I would say, bad, relative to their, at least relative to their, you know, best books. Um, Maybe not bad in the scheme of like all books, but uh, it's cool to see like one of the um, giants of American literature, the one of the pillars of like the modern American canon, you know, kind of missing a little bit. It almost is like a little bit inspiring in like a backwards, funny kind of way. So yeah, I think the book is kind of important for, I guess, how he um, changes throughout his career and is experimenting with his style kind of later on in his career. But I wouldn't read this book for pure pleasure. I would read it as like, um, you know, if you're interested in being a writer yourself or really interested in American literature. There is a movie adaptation by Howard Hawks that William Faulkner wrote the screenplay for, interestingly enough, and apparently Hawks was all in the news saying, you know, he changed the story a lot because Hemingway is not the same Hemingway he used to be. He's washed up, and they had kind of a public beef over it, which is interesting. And yeah, like I said, some literary critics really stand by this book as being like one of his best books. There's certain sections of prose and whatever else. So, to have and have not, Hemingway, check it out. Or not.